6:15.
All right, guys, at 6:15, we'll call this meeting to order. Did everybody get a chance to look over the minutes from the July meeting? And if so, do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
I'm sorry, who seconded?
Michael. Mr. Peabody, what do we have going on financially?
All right, I give everyone a report just to show August, the last month that we have, August, and then October through August, the activity that's happened so far in this fiscal year. So this fiscal year is almost done because the fiscal year ends September 30th. So if you look at that second column, I mean, that's all but 1 month worth of activity. And you'll see the big thing is the bond issuance fee that we received. And then the farmer's market is slowly but surely bringing in some money. We've got $2,500 from that for this first season, so not too bad. And right now, the available balance that we have is $45,000. There's $88,000 and some change, but then we have the gateway sign to pay for with about half of that. So, anybody have any questions?
No.
All right, we'll move on down to old business. We've got the secretary position and one other seat available. With that, I know, Janet, we've had a couple of applications come through, and we've got some potential interest for the secretary position.
Yes, so I sent an email out to all the applicants that we did not approve to move forward, but 2 applicants responded to being interested in the secretary position. Rob's here, and Kimberly Blair also expressed interest. So I invited both of them to come tonight and kind of see how we run things and how the minutes go and the agenda goes. And then I know that you guys had talked about doing interviews with them at some point. So I'll give Rob an opportunity in public comment to introduce himself and kind of his business and so on and so forth.
Thanks for coming. Was Kim, is she working?
She said she was coming.
Okay.
All right. Any other feedback from that? If not, we'll move on to the main event, Mr.
You don't have
Chris.
anybody for the open position?
No new applications have come through.
Because this chair is going to be empty soon.
I know. So that would be an open position and then your position. Yeah.
And we still have one don't we still have a few open that have applied for the position, the DDA position?
Well, from our last meeting, you guys did not approve the applicants that had turned in so far. So that means that we need some more applicants to apply.
Okay.
Let me ask about that real quick, because
Sorry,
we
Chris.
talked about interviewing these people, and I'm not sure that we actually set up a process to do that. So eliminating them without interviewing them might be something that we might want to go back and revisit, that if we can set up some sort of interview process, that since we're trying
Sure.
to find 2 people, maybe
Yeah.
maybe we revisit those folks and interview them.
Okay.
So maybe setting up some sort of process for that.
Yep.
Okay.
Just need to figure out getting you guys together and do that. And, maybe we split you up, so on and so forth, but we can figure out, an interview schedule for that for sure.
Either interview or they could come and speak. Couldn't they do that? Tell us a little bit.
It's however you guys want to do it.
like during our next meeting.
Well, I just know that we said, based on what they had on paper, it might be a good idea to do some interviewing, and we really never did that, so we've eliminated them at this point and never really talked to them, so.
Yep.
So do we need to vote on that?
We can add it to the future agenda.
Mm-hmm.
I would say.
Okay.
All right, any other feedback on that? Perfect. Sorry, Chris, go ahead, please.
Oh, not a problem. So Janet asked me to come and speak to this forum since you guys have the name downtown in your title. So I'll really give you an update on what's going on with downtown Villa Rica from the standpoint of the city's initiatives. We've got 4 major pillars to the efforts that we're attempting to move forward. You've got the North Side Streetscape Project, which was identified in the Livable Centers Initiative study that we finished last year, and applied for funding. We recently have been awarded $1.14 million towards the total $1.43 million project cost for phase one, which is the planning and engineering phase of the streetscape project. Based on the concept plan that's in your notes there, you can see that this is going to be a truly transformative design in the way not only that the traffic flow functions, but also how the community interacts with having a town green in the center, kind of uniting the left and the right, the north and south sides of downtown. The Mirror Lake Connector is one in my grants that we refer to as the Villa Rica Transportation Reunification Program. We like to spin it as a link between a very underserved, disadvantaged part of town and the economic prosperity and opportunities located in downtown Mirror Lake. So the other side is that you've got a third of the population living in Douglas County that does not have a direct link to downtown. So we want to energize that linkage and create more economic opportunity in the downtown area. Placemaking in alleyways, that's the Georgia Conservancy project that we were awarded through the Atlanta Regional Commission. That's a $75,000 grant towards a $80,000 project. They're going to come in and look at how we aesthetically brand the city, how we provide directional signage, how we utilize the built environment with respect to public art, the functionality with respect to our secondary streets that are off the primary commercial corridors. That project has been ongoing now for a number of months. We are bringing it to the city council for a presentation on the 4th, at which time they're going to be discussing their next steps towards distributing a very wide audience visual preference survey. Many of you may have already seen the 2.0 version. We started off with a focus group. We refined the survey, then sent it out to Main Street, DEA, some other important stakeholders, called out the stakeholder group. Then to get more information, more feedback, then to really hone it down to get something that we can really send out in mass distribution. We did this very successfully when we did the LCI program. It reached more people in the LCI public outreach than we got in the comp plan and in the RSVP. So I think that's something to say when we look at using the Main Street portal social media, the city social media, our listservs, going out to Fairfield Plantation and Mirror Lake, to the Facebook pages there, and really getting the word out. We get a lot of engagement. The last part is kind of a wishful thinking. It's this is in the early stages. Pedestrian upgrades downtown, absolutely critical, currently absolutely important. It all started a few months ago when we had a delegation from the State Department of Department of Community Affairs, and we were walking from Janet's office over to Chattanooga, and just the perils of crossing the tracks. There's nowhere to stop. You're basically going from track into gravel ditch and a track into gravel ditch, and it's it's just unthinkable. The pedestrian upgrades downtown, I'm applying for a federal grant that's called the Railroad Crossing Elimination Grant. And it's not aimed at eliminating crossings, you would think, but it's also geared towards reducing the safety issues that are at our railroad crossings. So the fact that we have no pedestrian infrastructure, the infrastructure that is there, if you think about where South Candler, the pedestrian crossing, that it's basically just an asphalt ramp into some tumbling stairs. I mean, it's ridiculous. Not ADA, nothing's ADA compliant. If you're in a scooter or a wheelchair or on crutches, forget about going on one side of town to the other unless you're going to drive. So we want to correct that, and I've applied for a $584,000 grant. It's a federal grant for a project cost of $730,000. That will add in the pedestrian infrastructure right there in North Carroll, the railroad tracks, and then add sidewalk on the north side of East Montgomery from Carroll down to the West Montgomery traffic light. So what you've got now is you've got quite a lot, a decent travel lane and a very, very wide parking lane, and then you've got a grass embankment. So what we want to do is try to pull that curb out a bit, add the pedestrian infrastructure all the way, so it really creates a much safer environment for vehicles and for pedestrians. And that the mid-block crossing is going to go to a ramp switchback, which I've seen used very successfully in other cities, and really, I think, opens up that perception of no parking, because you take your life in your own hands if you try to park in a certain way that there's no way to cross over. So I'm going to speak to these things very briefly in some detail. So, of course, this is a picture from the Livable Centers Initiative Study, the concept plan for the Northside Downtown Streetscape. You can see that this would eliminate 2 blocks of Main Street, which are completely currently adjacent and parallel to Temple Street. That will actually bring a lot more eyes to what's happening there on those building frontages in the shops. When you've got that distance of, I'm driving up Main Street, I'm looking over parked cars, and then I'm looking over more parked cars, and then I'm looking over a roadway, I'm looking over the parklets before I can even see what's going on in the storefront windows. So I think this configuration really activates the space and creates that town green that's really gonna anchor downtown and give Janet a place for her big gold man statue. This is just a closer up version of the project area. And again, this is from Chief Street down to North Carroll. And this is what we were just awarded funding for. Now, $1.43 million is a lot of money for engineering. Yeah, that's like construction documents, that's landscaping, that's infrastructure, that's utilities, that's stormwater, that's all the problems that we currently have over there. And that is going to engineering right now. Actually, we have not gotten the announcement, but it's coming very soon. The award should be announced probably next month by ARC. But this will be roughly an 18-month project for the engineering because it's extremely technical. And then we will be able to apply for funding for construction. Construction will probably be 3+ times as much as the engineering. So that's going to be a solid commitment from the city, but it's going to be absolutely transformative before we then take it down to the other side of town and do Montgomery Street.
Can I interrupt you briefly?
Yeah.
We can't apply for the other grant on construction until the engineering's done?
Hmm?
Chances of, once the engineering's done, getting that grant?
Pretty strong.
Okay.
Yeah.
So once you make that initial investment, you gain a little ground on a secondary grant?
The LCI program has been around for about 25 years now, and so there's a lot of communities that have already cycled through it.
Okay.
And so there are a lot of supplemental studies that are applied for and some implementation projects. But in this current environment where there's so much infrastructure money, honestly, I think we're talking about $4 trillion. It's gonna. I mean, that's $400,000 million. In context, it's going to take years to flush that money through the economy. If they haven't spent all these billions on COVID relief yet, and that's kind of like already done, so I'm not concerned about the money so much.
Okay.
All right, so looking at the current and future conditions, now on the top is kind of a profile of what you have with the railroad, then a little bit of green buffer, then you got some sidewalk, and then you've got 2 sides of parallel, actually vertical parking with 2 travel lanes, then it goes down the grass embankment, and you've got, so a 1 lane of parking, and then you've got the parklets as well as some additional parallel parking and a little sidewalk. What this does is, you can see, I'm gonna go from right to left, it pushes that sidewalk out. So we don't need to have the structures in front of Los Cowboys or in front of Uncorked. That becomes part of the sidewalk. I mean, you got just a really defined outdoor dining terrace area that's not some wooden construct out there. You still have 2 lanes of parking and 2 lanes of travel and wider sidewalks, again, going up to the town green, which is an elevated level, which then goes up to the Golden Nugget Trail, which then terminates at the railroad tracks. So that's what we're engineering, and having to move all the utility and having to do all the stormwater improvements, and that's crazy.
This movement of all the traffic onto Temple Street, is that predicated on the completion of the bypass and the state turning over Temple Street to the city and not being part of Highway 61 anymore?
Well, that's a very good question, and we all know that the bypass has been in progress for 40 years. So the answer is it's extremely well timed and very convenient. We've already gotten GDOT we've actually gotten the city to finally accept GDOT's reprogramming of the state route. And so that aspect is done. And the fact that we actually still have a lease agreement for the easements in the railroad right-of-way that we were then used to translate into, okay, ARC is comfortable with funding us to go ahead and move forward with this project, because otherwise, if we hadn't talked to the railroad already or didn't have some sort of agreement in place, then it would have created some challenges. But so, of course, this is the now, and we love it. It's so well utilized. I mean, look how much parking is out there that everyone's complaining about parking, but no one wants to use it. All right, compared to the future. The future is nigh. So it creates like a town green. Okay, I'll move on to the next project because I know we're pressed on time. Mirror Lake Connector. God, we've been talking about this for 10 years, right? All right, so segment 1, segment 2, we're going to call this the Villa-Rica Transportation Reunification Program, because the folks right there in the middle where the roundabout is located is one of the lower income areas of the city. We would like to provide some better opportunities and better outcomes from those folks. We've got a new multifamily development, which is being currently constructed right at that arch where Anderson and Cleghorn come together. If you haven't been down there a while, you'd be very impressed. I went down there 3 weeks ago. They were pouring the slabs. Went down there last week. 1 building's already out. Like, wow. So that's 150 units of tax credit, which only 4% tax credit, which means maybe 10% have to be income qualified, but the rest are actually market rates. So what that does is it adds to the downtown economic market pool. And without this road, none of this is going to work. So segment 2 was one that we got funded for $1.75 million through the Department of Community Affairs. That one, we talk about projects and how long they take. This project is on like steroids because it has to be done in 24 months period, which means now we're at 23 months. So I've met with our city engineer this morning and said, we got to get on this because we've got nothing but time against us and they're not going to give us any extensions. And if we don't get it done, we have to pay back the whole thing. So segment 2 is done. Segment 1 is part of the Fuqua development, which is the Mirror Lakes commercial and multifamily townhouse as well. Without the road, none of that would be possible. And just the amazing market that's going to open up when you've got, say 2,500 houses over in Mirror Lake with another 2,000 left to build, which there's already a portion of that which is under construction or at least been platted or land disturbance. So that's moving forward. You've got how many of your units? Roughly 500 units at the Fuqua project. Then you've got the Arbors, which is another 180 or so. And then there's another one that goes north, which is off the map, which, yep, you've got what's called Wood, PEC, which is a multifamily, which would be behind the mill. And then you've got some going north, going towards the hospital in Old Stone. You've got Inline Communities, which is a combination of senior, single family, I think maybe some medical office, and I believe some townhouses. So you've got this tremendous concentration, market share that's coming to downtown, and we want to make sure we've got the infrastructure in place that's going to make that as successful as possible. So again, this was the earliest plan. This was the plan I submitted with the RAISE grant, and it's really not a very clear plan because it looks like we're trying to ask for them to pay for everything, and it only cost $6 million for everything. Well, no, actually, just the right-hand side cost $9 million. So, I didn't have a lot of faith in that one. We had a really short amount of time to prepare for that one. But the advantage is that once we did the groundwork on it, we're able to take that application, really stream it down, clarify it, reapply it for the current grant, which is due on the 14th, which is the Reconnecting Communities pilot program. I don't have a lot of faith in it. It's because it's a federal grant, and we're not in a very administration-friendly political area, to say the least. But thirdly, there's going to be this project 3.0, which is that the last step is going to be a state grant for $2 million, which is probably 25% of the project cost, maybe a third, which is better than nothing. And that's money then that doesn't have to then go towards the tax allocation district, which means we can divert those funds to another project or reduce the amount of time that the TAD takes to pay off. It's a win-win. Like I told Tom Barber, I said, like, I'm going for this grant. He's like, well, that's not going to pay for anything. I'm like, you want $2 million or what? Come on.
Right.
All right, so here's just a close-up of what that looks like, going from Cleghorn Street, Darden Street, and then connects to the connector at Shoreline. I will give Tom the compliments and the council that they had the preliminary engineering paid for in advance of this. So when the grant opportunities came to us, we were selected for the downtown one because we already had the preliminary engineering done. So I think to have that done is really smart, especially in this current economic environment where the money's out there. They're looking for shovel-ready projects, and we're ready to go. Placemaking alleyway. This was a project, of course, done by the Georgia Conservancy. Many of you saw the visual preference survey. Again, I mentioned that this is going to council next week for a presentation. We're doing the mass community input campaign, and then it will wrap up. Once we get the results from that, it'll wrap up towards the end of the year, and by the spring of next year, we're going to have a consolidated downtown master plan for this purpose. Now, I'm a little torn on the alleyways because honestly, as you see on your agenda, there's code enforcement issues. It's a utilitarian alleyway. I mean, it's used for parking, it's used for utilities, it's used for trash collection. Doesn't mean it has to be that way forever. It doesn't mean that we can't improve upon it. It's all privately owned. The city can't spend money on private property without the consent of the property owner. But if we don't do anything, then nothing gets done. So, we want to at least look at our options. Look at what downtown looks like from the outside. We see it all the time. What do people around us who make decide to come through here or not perceive us as. That's what I think is important about is looking at the visual branding of the city and identifying opportunities for enhancing those placemaking elements like public art, murals, and creating spaces that are, for example, if we had like a farmer's market pavilion, that is on my really, really top to-do list because I don't think it does very well in the mill as well as it could in a covered environment. So looking for opportunities to really enterprise on downtown and making it a real strong destination location because I think, honestly, I've been in Metro Atlanta for, 53 years. And I've been in city planning and municipal government for 25 years. And I've worked for 5 LCI cities in my past. And I look at where they all started at. And I look at, like, I always say that we're very similar to Ackworth. What they are now, if you go back 15 years, what they started at is probably 2 grades below where we are today. And we were just getting started. So this is really going to be more akin to, I think, more like a Woodstock in the next 15 years.
Ackworth did some amazing stuff with their alleyways and actually making some of their restaurants double-ended, so they have outside seating on both sides of the restaurant, part of it an alleyway, part of it off the street next to the railroad tracks.
Yep. And Hapeville also did a really good job with theirs. They had an alleyway that was just like ours. It was just actually gravel, but it was used to collect trash cans and had the power lines that went back there. What they did was they took out the gravel or the asphalt, in our case, and put down a dedicated paved, like a paver stone type of finish with a flush concrete curbing on the side to give it some visual identity. And then, so you could actually drive on it, but they could also close it down. And they could use it for, they have like a shipping container that has a glass wall on one side, and they turn it into a temporary gallery, you know, that rotates out art. I mean, there are things that we can do to improve the space, but it's just a matter of having the vision and having the cooperation of the property owners to get something done.
That's Chris's next grant that I've asked him to apply for is how we silence our railroad like Ackworth did. We just need about $2 million to do that.
One thing at a time. So one thing we're looking at with respect to the actual field work, if you go in and do a map of, for example, this is between Wilson and Montgomery, the one famous open alley there behind Doyle's, where you've got your trash cans, where you've got your air conditioning condensing units, where you've got utility poles and dumpsters and vacant lots, and you know, it's not as easy as, you know, window dressings and landscaping. There's a lot of technical aspects that have to be taken into consideration to find the best solution. So that's something that we're working on from the fieldwork side, as well as trying to get input from the community. So I'm sure you saw many of these, and this will be really in the bottom left is really kind of closest to the Hapeville plan as far as having that brick center, and which creates like almost a visual walking path, but being a hardened surface across, it's drivable. They're going to be expanding on this significantly to add more options, to get a greater variety of input.
Have there been any incentives for are they thinking of incentives for the owners of the, instead of the state, to where maybe tax breaks or something like that to get them to pitch in or make it a cooperating thing?
Yeah, there really no tax breaks for that. I mean, there is a facade grant program that the city has.
Actually, that is the DDA.
Okay, that the DDA has, that you guys have. Mm-hmm. But also there are historic preservation tax credits for facade renovations. As far as alleyways, no, not really. But I do hear that the DDA is a pretty handsome reserve that, you know, if they want to contribute some money. We're looking for very low cost, high impact projects. And that's something that really gets flushed out through this process. Part of the final report is to provide like an implementation plan for some designated projects. So that we have a solid idea of this is what we can do for $5,000. And we get DDA to spend $1,000 of their money, and we go to the city and get them to spend some money, and we get some sponsors out there. Next thing you know, we're ready to go. This is just the timeline we expect to be finished by the end of February. And then this is the really exciting part. So this is the railroad crossing SFATI enhancement program by the looks of that. Apparently it's a little typo. So this was like the sort of top, the pictures that are around the center picture are ones from Hapeville that we did our walking tour in the last couple of years. Very similar to here. They've got a railroad that runs through downtown. It's at various grades. It's got various crossing opportunities. So based on a conceptual model of really what we need versus, we could spend a lot of money on stuff that's not going to really be used or appreciated. So I want something that's going to be a balance between value for the railroad. It's going to be attractive to them to want to cooperate on this, and also a real functionality for the city. So what I did was I created a 3D modeling, I used a modeling program and created a sort of a current conditions compared to proposed conditions. So as you can see on the top left, that's an aerial of downtown. You see where that pedestrian infrastructure just ends at the gravel. There's nothing going across the tracks. The one on the left, the sidewalk on the left-hand side, you can't really see a little bit of it, but it's basically forcing you to go into the road. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's a ridiculous setup. On the right-hand side, you see there, you've got existing conditions, no pedestrian infrastructure, and this is adding that infrastructure and also restriping and putting a new sidewalk that links down the north side of the road. I love this 3D software. I didn't get a chance to put the buildings in for scale, but you get an idea of the improvements. And certainly there on the right-hand side where I kind of tried to do a replica of the picture itself, showing that ADA compliant switchback ramp. And there's also fencing that goes down this whole corridor on both sides of the track, so that for the safety enhancement, you're basically hurting people, for lack of a better term, through designated points of ingress and egress, instead of being able to just cross wherever they feel like going.
Right.
So I think that's going to be an attraction to the railroad.
Chris, before you move, or can you go back? So the bottom left is my concern, and I brought that up to a GDOT person after having a conversation. Tractor trailers are going to destroy that portion of the sidewalk right there. There's no way to avoid that. They already hit the cement pole right there all the time.
Yeah.
So is there a solution? And I know, of course, the goal would be to have the northern bypass and have them out of downtown, but that's not going to happen. Has it been talked about maybe that GDOT can take the turn lane back some so trucks don't have to swing as sharp?
I would highly recommend they do that. However, how they treat their roads is really not up to us. But I would say that your answer, you kind of answered it yourself, is basically when they redesignate or reprogram the state routes over to the bypass and out of downtown, downtown becomes a city road. Mm-hmm. And so we have control over how that's utilized, and also the enforcement mechanism as well. The bypass was let to bid earlier this year, and they expect it to be finished in 2 years. If we get this railroad grant, it's going to be probably done a year after that's done.
Okay. So it's in timeline with?
Yes.
Okay. So that makes a little more sense, as long as, I mean, that's the only concern I've ever had with any of these, and I love the idea, but that corner's going to get destroyed.
Absolutely. I mean, I've done streetscape projects, one particular over in Shanley, which very similarly, you had Peachtree Road, which ran across the railroad tracks. This is off Peachtree Industrial, which is on this side. But there's a street semis would come up that, and then they tried to turn down this little road and just annihilated all of this new streetscape infrastructure they put in. It took probably about a year before the truckers finally realized that they can't make that turn. So yeah, I don't have a magic wand for that intersection, nor do I have a magic wand for Punkintown or the roundabout at Punkintown or any other little sticking points in the city. But you know, hopefully these things will work out with respect to timing. All right, so this is the process, and I don't have my glasses on, so I can't really read well, basically looking at this from the standpoint of how many months it takes to do which part of the project. This is not a big project. It doesn't take extensive engineering. I don't believe that there is really a whole lot of utility infrastructure, absent whatever the railroad has in those right-of-ways. So I don't think this is going to be a really difficult project to move forward. But we're still looking at over $700,000 for the project. I think that's probably kind of low, but I did not come up with these estimates. So.
Has the railroad seen these plans in any way?
Surprise!
Okay.
Now, does that fencing there, does that enable them to not blow their horn as much?
No.
No.
'Cause, I mean, you're blocking off a lot of the access for pedestrians, so.
I'm actually.
That's why we need the $2 million to make them be quiet.
It's a bribe.
I met a couple weeks ago with a advocacy group. It's a national railroad lobbying group called Go Rail. And I believe we are in a very good position if we can just keep some of the powers that be away and sort of do some of the background negotiations ourselves. I think we'd go a little further. I think historically we have not had a very good relationship with the railroad. And there's probably many reasons for that, but you know, COVID comes along. They're still working at home. I think there's going to be kind of a changing of the guard of the years. People start to retire, so the culture kind of changes, and some of those bad memories kind of go away. And we're working with our partnerships like the Atlanta Regional Commission, which has done project after project or project in every railroad town in the metro Atlanta area. They have very good relationships with the railroad. GDOT works with the railroad. I mean, so I think that we bring positivity and really productive change to our plans that benefits everybody, then I think we have a better chance of moving forward. So that basically is the end of my presentation. I'm doing this again at the Lions Club if you want to catch Act 2 on Wednesday. So the downtown focus, of course, center of the community. I mean, I think all roads lead to downtown Villa Rica. That's how we want it to be. You got the bypass, or not the bypass, the connector from Mirror Lake to downtown, which then flows into South Carroll. And you got, you know, 78 East Montgomery, and you've got Veterans Memorial on one side. I mean, all things flow into downtown. You got Dallas Highway, Rockmont Road. I mean, everything comes here. This is critical. Destination location. What are we doing now investing in downtown, which makes it the place that it will be and be known as for the next, you know, 2 generations. You know, this is not your father's Villa Rica. This is, you know, brand new with a bit of the grunge kept. Mobility and access. And we talk about being able to walk across the tracks and you know, the largest segment of our population is not getting any younger. Let's make sure that we're all able to get around safely. Public safety and lighting. It's a hazardous area. I mean, if you look at I met last week with an organization called Safe Routes to Schools, and we walked from Villa Rica Elementary at 6:45 in the morning to see where people were walking in from, if they were, which some were. And we walked through downtown. We walked up to Glanton Heinzman Elementary and walked all the way through the neighborhoods back there. what I was told was that we have in our downtown area more crashes than they have in downtown Atlanta. In just in the narrow block section. So that's probably from Chief Street over to Stone Street and Temple to Wilson Street. Just that center block. We have more crashes than Atlanta. That's unexcusable. We've got to fix that, and we're working towards that. Looking at the appropriate mix of uses, we talk about bringing residential downtown. The great opportunity that the PEC and Wood Partners engineering project that's for the multifamily behind the olive tree. It's 300 housing units. Those are not subsidized. Those are market rate. We all know how expensive rents are right now. Oh, Lord, help me, Jesus. But let me tell you, a lot of those folks are paying more in rent than we're paying our own mortgages. Yep. So I don't want to disparage anybody who's renting. Looking at the functionality and practicality, we look at the Newtown Green, we look at how the pedestrian environment works, wider sidewalks, outdoor dining, pedestrian scale lighting, putting one of my pet peeves. If you look at those utility lines that run down East Montgomery, starting at the intersection of South Carroll, that has like 7 traffic signals on one wire, and you go and you've got power lines that get run down all the way down where Butterball used to be. None of those feed any of the buildings. They're just transmission lines. We don't need them. We don't want them on the front. Move them to the alley. I don't care, But, looking at the functionality, the practicality, the aesthetics, planning for the future, that's what we're doing now. This is not going to happen next year or the next year. Hopefully by the time I retire, I'll have at least 2 of these projects done. It takes that long in some cases. We don't want to disregard people's sentiments and their memories of Old Town Villa Rica and what it was and what it means to them. And I think we have to look beyond the grit and look at things that we can do to make improvements. That whole corridor from the Douglas County line all the way down to probably South Candler, that corridor where you've got these swaths of asphalt, huge, areas that are off the travel lanes that are just wasted space that could be a bike lane, that could be adding wide sidewalks, they could be, a landscape strip with lighting and then sidewalks. I mean, there's a lot of things it can be. So really just creating that draw, that the beginning point where you're coming in and then you're in downtown, and it's just this culmination of all this wonderful stuff. So, and then public events and festivals give people a reason to come down. So we're definitely on the right track.
I have a question, and my brain is a little not where it needs to be at right now. The golf carts.
Yep.
Is that still something that's permitted, or is it something that's definitely going to be done, like, when all this happens, that they'll be able to, like, drive, like, for people that live, like, off Rockmart Road or, like, South Candler and all that?
Well, I'll answer that in 2 ways. The city already passed a golf cart ordinance allowing golf carts on streets that have speed limits of 35 miles an hour or less.
Okay.
25.
Yeah.
I was just making sure Leslie was paying attention. And so with respect to Rockmart and some of the other roads, I don't know what the travel speeds are on those, so I can't say, but...
Okay. Because I just couldn't remember. I knew that was where they were working on to the 25 to the 35, and I couldn't remember the transition if they did or didn't.
But as far as infrastructure and dedicated lanes, the Mirror Lake Connector is going to have, and this is kind of a big problem with the financial point on this, but it's designed to have bike path on one side and golf cart on the other.
Oh, okay.
And 2 travel lanes in the middle.
Okay, awesome.
That's pretty much if the TAD happens, right?
If the TAD happens, yes.
Okay.
If the TAD does not happen, then we get a scaled back, slimmer version of that.
Okay.
And maybe all the bike paths and golf carts are on the same road. So I
long
thank
as we
you,
have it.
thank you for your time, and looking forward to just the vision and the legacy that we all leave in this city of ours. It's
And
very
we really
exciting.
appreciate all your hard work too, 'cause
Absolutely.
Yes.
you put a lot of time into this stuff and
Thank you.
very much appreciate it.
I'm
I'd like-
excited for it.
I'd like to offer a motion that the DDA author a letter signed by our president supporting the city's application for a grant through the Railroad Crossing Elimination Grant Program.
Yeah, great.
Second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Unanimous.
Thank you. Well, I will say that we did get a letter of support from the U.S. House Representative Drew Ferguson, which was a nice endorsement to have a congressman sign on to your project when it actually goes to the federal government for funding. So maybe that gives us a little bit of an edge. I don't know.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
Any other questions for Chris? Thank you, Chris, as
Thank you,
always.
I do have one more question, sorry. Why does your cup keep lighting up? What is it
He
doing?
needs to drink
Tells
water.
him it has to drink water.
Telling you to drink more? Okay. I'm sorry, I'm just sitting here and all of a sudden it starts blinking while you're,
I thought too.
all right.
It's not DDA business, but we were curious what it was.
All right.
All right, moving to item number 2, community market end for the farmer's market.
So we're gonna do, the last day of the farmer's market this year will be October the 10th. That'll be the final date. And so in talking with Brandy and myself and kind of figuring out what next year looks like, the start date will still be the 1st of May. But the last month, or Monday in September will end then because, of September, because October starts and the season dwindles, right? So that's what we're looking at for '23.
So it would end on Labor Day?
No, the last Monday in
Oh,
September.
sorry, I'm sorry.
Yes. And then, Michael, to your point last month when we talked about code enforcement, I did talk to the city manager, Andy and I, and we talked about if there were specific incidences where we needed a code enforcement to go in to bring it to him with some sort of backup, and that we could, at that time approach them with, if something needed to be cleaned up. Again, as Chris mentioned, it is private property, so but we can, he would visit that once we brought him something to validate that. Rob Smith's here, and Rob was one of the applicants that we reached out to about becoming the secretary, potentially. And so, Rob, did you want to come and introduce yourself? He is a local business owner.
Yep.
In Villarica.
Thanks, Janet. Hey, folks. Nice to meet you. Thanks for giving me a chance. My name's Rob Smith, and I continue to raise my hand to become more involved in the city of Villarica for a couple of reasons. One that's altruistic and one that's not. So I'll start with the altruistic version first. I'm at that stage of life where service is more important to me than gathering. You know how we go through the gathering and the hunting and the gathering stages of our life, and then we're into the disbursement, and I am into service. And over the course of my career in my life, I believe I've developed a set of skills and capabilities that would be of value. So I continue to raise my hand, and I raised it enough that Janet gave me this opportunity to come talk to you guys. The not so altruistic version, that I'm very interested in the DDA and really enjoyed your presentation, Chris. In the spring of 2020, my wife Christy and I, we're empty nesters. Our oldest daughter, Kristen, teaches school in Douglas County down at Beulah. Our youngest daughter, Rachel, is in her second year of pharmacy school in Florida. So today's a very exciting day for us. She started rotations. She is in school in a little town called Bradenton, if you know where that is, right by Anna Maria Island. So she started rotations this morning. She is evacuating tonight. So it's a little challenging for us on the personal front. But the point of that is, as our children moved on in their life, we sold our house where we raised our kids in Paulding County, and we looked at several towns. I grew up in Lithia Springs. Christy grew up in Ackworth. I know you guys were talking about Ackworth. So we went looking for places that were like where we grew up. And we both grew up in railroad towns. We looked at Hiram, we looked at Potter Springs, we looked at Dallas. We considered Carrollton, but that's a different world, as we all know. Went to school down there back in the 70s. We settled on Villa Rica for exactly the reasons that Chris was taught. We didn't know about that presentation. I can't wait to show Christy that when I get home tonight. Because we felt like Villa Rica is a town that's just about to take off. We bought, if you know where the Freemans used to live on Peachtree Street, we are the house where Montgomery dead ends into Peachtree. That's our driveway right there. A lot of folks think that's Peachtree Street, and we've had people circle around the house to get out to the other end. So the first person in Villa Rica to come meet us was Leslie, literally the day we moved in, because she wanted to know who were the crazy folks who just bought the old house by the railroad track. That was us. And if you've ever seen the movie The Money Pit, you remember The Money Pit with Tom Hanks and what was her name, Shelley Long or whatever, back in the 80s? That was Christy and me by the time Leslie came by. We completely gutted the house inside, have completely redone it, and we are very proud of what's going on Peachtree. The Porters next door with the house at the corner, the big white house at the corner of Jones and Peachtree, they've really upgraded and maintained that house. If you haven't been down the street lately to see what Greg and Angela have done, the Tollers have done to the old Cleghorn house, they just got that appraised for their insurance, and let's say it's in the mid 6 figures. So all of us on Peachtree Street are cheering.
The house is beautiful.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Was talking to them tonight. I think they're going to start moving in 2 days. So we are seeing Peachtree come back. And so that's the reason that's not altruistic. We've got a significant investment in downtown Villa Rica. We run our business, RKS Services, out of Peachtree Street. We formed RKS, Christy and I, back in 16, I think. We're licensed here in Villa Rica. It's a business services company. She does bookkeeping and accounting. I do business management consulting. So that's what we do with RKS. The public-facing side, last August, a little over a year ago, I agreed with a gentleman named Harold Cry, I don't know if you guys know Harold, to open his real estate office here in Villa Rica. That's the office on Bankhead Highway right next to Evans Barbecue. So that's been my public-facing image in Villa Rica as a realtor. And we totally believe in the future development of Villa Rica. We've made a significant financial investment here, so I've got more than a passing interest in supporting what Chris is doing and what you guys are all about to make Villa Rica a place that people want to be. I'm going to go off script here a little bit and maybe say something that's politically incorrect. I grew up in Douglas County. That's an example of how not to develop a community. I'll just leave it at that. When I was at West Georgia, before I settled on a Bachelor of Arts degree in English, go figure, I did a internship with the Douglas County Planning Department and actually interviewed the mayor of Villa Rica. I forget who it was at the time. This was in the, I was there 74, 75 time frame, and the mayor of Douglasville, talking about the partnership that cities were developing around the country with local governments partnering with each other to develop. It was very clear from both sides that they wanted nothing to do with each other. So I saw what happened in Douglas County. Villa Rica has a chance to do something very different here. Christy and I, when we made our decision about where we wanted to put our money, we put it here. So I want to actively participate in the development and return on our investment. In terms of working with the board, with you guys as the secretary, I'm currently, and I think Sandy, this will make more sense to you maybe, my primary board membership is in Paulding. I'm a secondary member at West Metro, and I'm the treasurer for the Paulding board. So just not even a year ago, I went through the parliamentarian rules again, Robert's Rules of Order, with the parliamentarian for the Georgia State House. So a very in-depth study. We spent 2 days with him down at Banning Mills. I've still got those notes and everything else. Getting ready for our big budget review this Friday. So in terms of running meetings at the corporate level, all my career, building agendas, helping folks achieve goals, etc., That's what my business is about. And the specific skill set, I think with Janet's tutelage and with your patience, I'd be delighted to step in and work with you if that's what you decide to do. Let me know when you want to do the interviews and I'll make myself available. So I just wanted to introduce myself. A couple of you I've had a chance to get to know and work with. Appreciate Janet's opportunity. And Leslie, thanks for making us feel welcome. So, okay, thanks, guys.
Thank you, Rob.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am, we are still in public comment.
I knew he was doing the presentation tonight. I wanted to come, and I feel more at ease now that Rob spoke for a little bit, because I found out that in this meeting, you can go over 3 minutes and not be handcuffed and drug out. Isn't that what they do in ours?
No, I'm going to start that right now. Can we make a motion for a 3-minute time limit?
Okay, I'll
Leslie's
talk
up there.
quick.
No.
But I bet, even though it may have been a longer meeting, I bet because of what you saw, you maybe feel a little bit better. Real quick, I want to thank you, first of all, for all of y'all that are here, because you could be a lot of other places, including cooking dinner, eating dinner, spending time with somebody else, doing something fun, but you're here volunteering your time. And that is much appreciated, because every one of our boards and everything, volunteers, library, and people that perform really important functions for the city, and you just don't realize. And I don't know that it's always publicly appreciated as much as it should, but it should be. Second of all, I wanted to thank you for what you did in regards to the farmers market this year. That was a real plus. It's been doing quite well. I noticed, it has its quieter times. Then there's the days where it may not be overcrowded, but it's a steady stream of people coming. So it's been wonderful to see the success of that after the previous one. Third, what Chris is doing here, I tell Chris, I think he's paid for himself and 4 other employees with just the money he's chased down. Now, it aggravates me a little bit because Washington makes no money. They make no money. Every bit of money they have, they get from all of us out here. It goes up there and they spin it around circles and they take part of it out. And then we have to hire somebody who's good at their job to jump through hoops and beg to get money back, right? Isn't that the truth? And, right, because they don't come up with any of it, but that's the way it works right now. So until things change, and we do have some stuff that's funneled down to the state, and then we can get it from them. But I was getting discouraged on some of the future plans. I'm going, if I have to go to one other charrette or input session to watch something not happen, but Chris was right. We did these things, but there was no money to back it up. And so now there is, and I think there's reason for enthusiasm. The pedestrian thing. This is the main reason I came tonight. The pedestrian friendly thing. So last Tuesday, I think it was. Yeah, I met with our GDOT representative for this region, because sometimes I got partial answers to my questions, or I got an answer that came from somebody else through someone else, and it says, no, we can't, but that's all I had. So when I had to go back to a constituent and explain why we weren't doing something, I didn't have enough information. I thought there's one way: go straight to the horse's mouth, meet with them, and find out, okay, this is what I want to know about the mini roundabout that you can hardly see at night. And I got the answers I needed for that on the improvements they're going to make, because I'm like, we need reflectors, we need reflective paint, we need, and stuff like that. But that doesn't concern y'all. What concerns y'all is that area that's still up there right now. I took him over, we went over to 2 different places. You can't see where Hickstown is from there, but there's a crossing by Hickstown. And I said, so what do we got to do to get the flashing pedestrian lights? Because we have the money to buy those lights, install them. What do we have to do? Well, over at the Hickstown crossing, all we have to do there, because of the setup right now, is one of those little slope, little cement ramp with the, I don't know any of the technical names, the yellow paint with the little bumps on it, so that if you're walking, you're vision impaired or whatever, you've got a cane. That's all we need for Main Street, so that those people can get from that parking and have kind of that strobe light effect. And we can't wait 3 and 4 years for this. We can't wait for these others, and they'll still play in and work then. Now, the one that will tie in more to the railroad crossing, that wonderful ramp thing, is Montgomery Street. Candler. So you're there where the fitness place used to be. Now it's the home design place, has stuff in there, and Cinema Tavern. So you have that crossing, you have that crossing right there at Candler Street that goes up to the suicidal thing, right? I mean, I can do it in sneakers, but you could fall into 78. This is what they said we have to do. Now, I know it's their crossing. There's a reason I'm telling you guys this, because I need you to be the squeaky wheel with me to go, we want these safety features downtown, and we can't wait years for them. And this one will fit in with what's going to make it better when we can get to the ramp with the fencing along the side. Over there, what he said we need on the side that Chat and Chew, so the south side of 78, we have to do kind of like a concrete bump out of that parking so that it's a safe place for a pedestrian to stand that's out from the sidewalk. See, it's safer. They're visible from there, and it gives them less distance to cover. So we need to do a bump out there that does have the little rampy thing with the bumps on it with the yellow paint. To the other side, now here's the thing. We're not talking about changing the crossing, that's to come. But there's people that cross over there because we have parking over there. I park over there. And so on the other side, where the suicidal asphalt thing comes down, all we have to do on that side is just a little slope off the curb. Nope, we need a little concrete bump out over there too. And then it has to be handicap accessible. And see, that way it gives them a safe place to stand, because otherwise they really are standing in a parking space. And so it puts them further out, less distance to cross on the street, and we can do the lights. And there's two other little things, but Bobby can do them. He has the credentials to do them.
On the corner there, on the Chat and Chew side, there's already that cement bubble there. Is that not sufficient if we had the ramp leading into it?
On that, I'm trying to remember that because I was standing there, and forgive me on that. It could be that what we have there is sufficient,
We just need
except
the
for
ramp.
the ramp. Yeah.
I mean, that would be the only, I mean, it's already protruding you to the end of the car there,
Yeah.
so.
And there's one on the railroad track side over by Hickstown that also is already there. So you really only need the other thing on the other side. I should have pictures because I was trying to scribble notes and take it while he's right. And then real quick, I was just going to mention for the interview process, a couple years ago, what y'all did, at least a few years ago, is you picked two of you to kind of be the interview committee. I mean, do it whatever you want. You know, I mean, you're all autonomous. You don't have to ask us for permission for a lot of things you do. So you do it the way you feel best, but you can choose two people if it's hard to get everybody together, and you can interview that way. The alleyways, real quick. Rome, Ellerslie, I was up in Rome when I was biking up there. It was still kind of an alleyway, but it's where cars could go through. But they just put a little bit of that fencing that looks kind of nice around the air conditioner units or around the garbage cans so that it was more attractive if pedestrians or you're driving back there, just to make it look a little better. Although this is privately owned, we can get easement, and I will say that I can probably vouch, and I have a connection on somebody else that could get a few other business people. I have at least one I know for sure who is more than glad when we get ready to do something to do whatever's needed on the backside of their own business. You know, with their husband and get back there, they would love to see that improved over off of South Carroll, you know, behind West Wilson there. We might have to work on some of the others. And you need to fill me in on the Cleghorn House because I knew it was getting done, but I didn't know who was doing it. That's it. Thanks.
Thank you, Leslie.
Thank you.
All right, items for future agenda. I do believe we need to work on an interview process, along with a couple of other things that I think got tabled a long time ago as far as the application for the facade grant and things like that.
Well, we have stopped doing the facade because we
Because
don't
of money.
technically have the money to
Correct.
give away, yeah.
But do we, if we're making changes, do we go ahead and add that on there and go ahead and redo that application so when we do have funding, we have it available?
We could, for
Just a
sure.
possibility if we're making decisions. Any other items anybody can
Not
consider?
at the moment.
All right, if that is all, do I have a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Got a motion, and a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Yes, sir.